Okay, hello and welcome to Small Business Success Story Catera. My name is Beth and I am a librarian with the Business Technology and Periodicals Department at the Central Library. We would like to encourage all attendees to visit mpl.org to stay connected and view our calendar of events. We ask you to also follow MPL on social media to stay updated on all our programs and services. This program will be recorded and a link will be emailed to all attendees after the presentation. A recording will also be available on MPL's page on YouTube. There will be a chance to ask your questions of our presenter, Kennita Hickman, at the end of the program. So be sure to type your questions into the chat box. I will now give the floor to Kennita.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Just to kind of level set, I would love for you to put your name, your business, and if you plan to continue to pursue this business as a side hustle, part-time, or if you're looking to go full-time. So if you could drop that in the chat right now, that will help me to kind of make sure that I'm speaking to both experiences. So name, what your business is, and if you plan to continue to pursue it as a side hustle or part-time, or if you're really looking to make the transition to full-time. And then while you guys are doing that, and that again will just help me to be able to level set, answer any questions that we have throughout. Certainly you can ask your questions or put your questions in the chat as this is going, and I'll work to answer them throughout and make sure that we have time at the end to answer them as well. So from there, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So as Beth said, this is Small Business Success, and it'll be kind of my story. And so I don't have a ton of slides, so I'm going to do a lot of talking and then open it up for questions. And again, answer your questions as we go. I really just wanted to be able to have an honest dialogue about my experiences, and hopefully you find it helpful. So my company, Catera, connects independent creatives and businesses through brand campaigns, live event production, and content creation. And we partner with for-profits, nonprofits, and independent creatives across art practices and disciplines. My work started off working with musicians, but we'll talk more about that in a moment. So who am I? As I mentioned, I'm Kennita, and I currently own Catera. And today actually is 16 months of being full-time. Like this is, I didn't realize it until I was preparing the materials for today. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's been 16 months. Like, let me take a moment and just kind of process that and take that in. So yeah, it's been 16 months of being completely full-time. And gosh, we'll get into it. We'll dish. So I actually started off as a writer, and I thought that that's where I would kind of remain. I thought I would get into writing, get into working in TV. And so I did some stuff in radio, but it was primarily covering musicians. And then that grew into artist management, public relations, event production, eventually becoming the director of an arts organization here in Milwaukee, and then now working full-time at Catera. I've won a couple awards for my work. 2013 Wisconsin Area Music Industry's President's Award, and then 2021's Radio Milwaukee Music Awards for Milwaukee Music Ambassador. And like small flex, but I am the first Black woman to win both. And I also served as WAMI's first Black woman vice president, and WAMI is a statewide music organization. Oh, I should also mention that I used to work at the library, Central Library, actually, for about 4.5 years. So it was my first job. And it should come as a surprise to no one that I was routinely not in my area and I was routinely talking. So you could find me in a stack of books somewhere talking, and not putting away my books in my area. But it was a fun time. It was the perfect job to have from age 16 to 20, and I've made a lot of lifelong friendships there. And so it's always awesome to be able to come back and share. And actually one of the photos in this PowerPoint is from the library. They let me come back and do a photo shoot there. So that was pretty cool. So idea to fruition. So as you can see here, for folks who are Milwaukee Bucks fans, I had the opportunity to interview George Karl years ago. I had to be about probably about 16, 17 here. So I was definitely working at the library. And I did this piece for, back then it was called Time Warner Cable, but I started KISS Communications in 2006. So most of my career, my company has absolutely been a side hustle. Absolutely, like full stop. It's been a side hustle. I guess I could talk a little bit about how I wound up going full-time 16 months ago. So I came to an impasse at my job. Knew at some point, I knew it was coming close to time to leave. And while I certainly didn't feel like I was ready to leave, I also started to freak out a little bit that I didn't have anywhere else I wanted to go. So for years, my dream job here in Milwaukee was working for Summerfest. I really wanted to be able to support independent creatives and get them on the stage at Summerfest in like this different and cool way. And by the time I became a director at an arts organization here, that was no longer the dream. It felt like I had worked everywhere in the city that I could possibly work for. And there was really only one thing I hadn't done, and that was work for myself. That was scary to put in your 2 weeks notice and be like, I'm going to work for myself and have absolutely no plan on how to do it. So one of the things I definitely wanted to say in terms of ideas to fruition is that I read a ton of books from like age 20 to even now, right? How to start a business, how to be better at branding, how to be better at public relations, how to make great content. I'm looking at a book right now on the other side of my laptop, 1 million followers. So I'm always reading books to like help me get better. And yes, read the books, get the knowledge. I'm a lifelong learner. Obviously, if you're here tonight, you're a lifelong learner. And if you're watching this, you know, the recording later, you're a lifelong learner. But there's a lot of stuff the books didn't tell me. And we'll talk about that as well. So KISS Communications, which was my first company. Can you guys see me? Can you guys see my little cursor pointing at this little logo right here? Maybe y'all can see it. So on this first flyer.
Yep, we can see it.
Okay. So KISS Communications was the first name of the company. And my mother named it that because my nickname is Casey. So my name is Kennita Catera. And so everybody who's met me up until like 2004 call me Casey. Anybody who's met me after 2004 calls me Kennita. So it's a very clear period in my life where I changed. I became Kennita. And so my mother called the company KISS. And we took the, usually when you see the acronym KISS, it's keep it simple, stupid. I felt like the stupid was a little harsh. So we took that off, and it was just KIS communications, keeping it simple communications. And had the logo created and went through some of the basics. So I'll talk to you a little bit about what are the basics of getting from ideation to making it a real thing. So definitely you want to make sure that you register with WDFI. So that's Wisconsin Department of Financial Institutions. That's really where you formalize the company as whether it's going to be an LLC or whether it's going to be an LLC or whether it's going to be a sole proprietorship, right? So you want to make sure you're registered, because once you get registered with WDFI, you're then able to get an EIN. And an EIN is essentially a business social security number. And from there, you're able to get a bank account in that company name, which is going to be important as you start collecting monies in that company name. And whether you are looking at, and let me look at the chats real quick. Okay, so, yep, looking to do side hustle. Okay, so whether you are looking to side hustle or looking to go full time, you will want to create different pathways of that money. So you don't really want people cash apping you to your personal bank account. You want to set up a business account. You want to have your Cash App or what have you set up to that. I'll add to that, if you guys are taking notes, I use an accounting software called Wave, WAVE accounting. And through that, I'm able to create invoices. I'm able to make different products. And so I use that. And so people can pay me online and it goes right into my bank account. I can also send invoices out from that software and send out reminders until that invoice is paid. So I will say KISS Communications was supposed to be a record label. So the big dream, in addition to like being on TV, was create a record label. I wanted like a Def Jam that started in Milwaukee. Like that's what I wanted. I wanted to be the lady version of Carson Daly and the lady version of Russell Simmons. That's what I was going for. And so, and really what that means is I was looking for a way to distribute music. So I was looking for a way to support artists of moving their music from here out to the masses. And so, of course, I read books on how to start a record label too. What should I have done though to start the business? I definitely should have trademarked. I should have done some research on trademarks. So in 2016, I actually had to do a name change from KISS Communications to Catera because the name had moderate risk. So with trademark, as it was explained to me specifically for my case, so let me be clear, I'm not giving legal advice, but for my company, KISS Communications, while it's not spelled the same, while it's, a PR, artist management firm, to the average person, they might think that this is connected to KISS the band. And that's where the trademark issue came. So I had to do a name change. 10 years of owning this company under this name, I had to change the name and come up with an entirely new logo that would have lesser risk of having trademark issues. So I definitely should have done that. But I will say the upside is that even after having the company for 10 years, I hadn't done a ton through the company name. Like people knew Kennita, they didn't necessarily know KISS Communications. Whereas people now know Kennita and they also know Catera and they know that they are together. So it wasn't horrible to do a name change at that point. But definitely necessary. And I think it was a good choice to do it at that time. Probably should have hired an accountant too. So for years, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I intentionally did not try to make a lot of money with my side hustle because I didn't want to need an accountant, which, saying that out loud, is just absolutely ridiculous. Get an accountant. Get an accountant. I'm fortunate that the accountant that I work with also helps me with like business planning and like business forecasting. So get a good accountant because you do want to make money, even if it's a side hustle. Again, still do WFI, so Wisconsin Department of Financial Institutions, and get your EIN so that you can set up a bank account and so that you have a legal structure for your business. That is what registering with the Wisconsin Department of Financial Institutions does. It gives you a legal entity for that business. And one really great resource for me that I had been using since 2016, they actually are the ones who took me through the trademark process to make sure there wasn't any major issues. It was Marquette's. Marquette has a free legal entrepreneurship clinic. And so I know we have two artists on the call, two visual artists who are really good, by the way. As for me, as somebody who purchases original art, all of the original art pieces I have in my home were done on a payment arrangement. And so obviously the artist agreed to a payment arrangement. I made sure to pay on time, but that involved a contract. And you definitely want someone to help you write your contract. You just do. So, because if you do decide to go the route of payment arrangements, you want to make sure that if those payment arrangements aren't met, what happens with the art and what happens with the money that's already been paid. A lot of folks, when I started using contracts as an artist manager, people were really intimidated by that. But to me, contracts are not meant to get over on anybody. Contracts are there to protect everybody. Everybody. And so I use a contract for everything. So even if y'all on the call, if you were like, oh, I want to do an art gallery night with a friend, I would say write up a contract with your friend about what's the roles and responsibilities, who's doing what, who's responsible for what's the take at the end of the night. You contracts protect people. And a good contract protects everybody so that everybody signs that feeling good, and that if things go bad, you have a way out. So Marquette's free legal entrepreneurship clinic helped me with that. They created every contract I use in my company. Every contract I use in my company, they created, and they sat down with me to help create each of those so that I could be protected moving forward. When I was going through the clinic, it was income-based, and I used them for years. I now can no longer be a client of theirs. So now I have to, go and actually find a law firm. But for all of the work that they did for the 6 years that we worked together, it's been incredible. I firmly recommend you have contracts. You need them. Even if you're afraid to use them, even if you feel like, oh, people won't want to work with me, who cares? You need contracts. The truth of the matter is, starting a business is not incredibly difficult. Running it is. So, getting the for me, I decided, even though I'm the only owner, I decided to do an LLC, got my EIN, had KISS Communications for 10 years, and then switched over to Catera. There were so many things I didn't do in the ideation phase. So I didn't really give a lot of thought to what social media platforms were best for me. And so again, for the folks on the call, it's really important to do some research, to think about what online platforms are best for you based on the demographics of who you're trying to reach. So I can tell you right now, Facebook is a lot of friends and family, but they do not buy my work. Period. They just don't. And so it's challenging for me sometimes to engage with Facebook versus an Instagram and a LinkedIn. So you'll want to spend some time to think about, and again, because I know both of y'all are visual artists, art, it can be expensive. It can be pricey, as it should, because it's quality. And so you'll want to give some thought to who has the money to spend with you, whether it's paying it in full or whether it's going to be in payment arrangements. You want to definitely give some thought to that. So yes, definitely researching your platforms. And I tell my clients, and I'll tell y'all, you don't need to be on every platform. Be on the platforms that matter, because posting content is time consuming. Creating content is time consuming. So I am not going to tell you to get a TikTok, get an Instagram, get a LinkedIn, get a this, get a that. I prefer LinkedIn because it's easier for me to connect with the people I need. And we're going to talk a little bit more about why LinkedIn ranks a little higher for me in a moment. So I should also mention that I also did some writing for different publications. So Scope magazine is out in Boston. Yo Raps was an online publication. I think that's overseas. And then Urbanology was out in Toronto. Here are some of the artists that I managed. The Cranberry Show, which was a skateboard hip hop group. Memoirs of a Broken Heart, B. Alexander, he was a hip hop artist. And then Tape Benders. They were maybe psychedelic rock. So I've kind of been all over the board in terms of management. But I'll tell you that whether you're managing a rock musician, hip hop musician, managing a visual artist, like there's some really foundational keys that are available that work for everybody. So some of the things that I did not do before we get into barriers to success, some of the things I didn't do, as I mentioned, was figuring out who my audience was. I really believe that if I got a logo, registered my LLC, had a bank account, and was just like, surprise, I'm open, hit your girl up, that people were going to give me their money. That's not how that worked at all. And so I had no idea who my audience was. And frankly, I had no idea if the audience could even afford my services. I knew who I wanted. It was independent creatives. I presumed that they would find the money to hire me, and that was not the case. So the thing is, entrepreneurship is about problem solving. And that's going to be really important if you decide to go the entrepreneurship route. Look, you can be an artist, you can be a musician, you can be a cook, you can be whatever, and choose not to formalize that into a business. And that's totally fine. For it to just be a thing that you love to do and you do on the side, totally fine. But if you become a business, you then have to do business things. Business things mean you have to look at how you're going to make money. That's the business. My operations coach told me, like, there's working in your business and there's working on your business. Working in your business is like the marketing. It's launching an online course, which I did last week. It's those things, right? Working on the business is like thinking about your strategy, looking at the financial projections, right? How much art do I need to sell to make XYZ this quarter? That's business. And the one thing I'll say is until you're able to build the revenue to hire a team, you have to do that on your own. You just do. However, if you are like, I really, really don't want to do this at all, you got to hire somebody who can. Because you need to be able to understand that. And let me be honest with you. This past September, literally Labor Day, last month, when I went full-time, June 17th, 2021, I hit the ground running up until Labor Day of this year. That was the first time I sat down and said, let me think about how much money I actually made this year. Let me look back at all of my accounting software. That's why accounting software is important, because I could literally just pull it up and I could see how much I brought in each month. And then I could see, well, what project was that connected to and ... So I was actually able to pull out real numbers and say, oh, this came from workshops and this came from consulting and this came from this. And so that's working on your business. And so as an entrepreneur though, right? So I am a creative, but I am also an entrepreneur. As an entrepreneur, I started my business to solve a problem. And so you have to know the problem that you're solving before you jump in. And for me, the problem has always been, how do I create opportunities for independent creatives, especially in Milwaukee, to generate income, right? So how do I help them generate income through their art? Then it evolved into, how do I help them generate income on and off the stage, which is where that branding piece comes in. I would certainly recommend that you find a mentor who can support you. And I would also recommend you have a couple good friends who can hold you accountable to your goals and who can keep you together on the really challenging days. And I'm gonna be honest, last week was a very challenging week. As a matter of fact, I've had 2 weeks of challenging weeks. Can I spill the tea? Okay, I'm gonna spill the tea. So 4 weeks ago, I hurt my back. Doing yoga, I did child's pose, and I thought, you know what? I'm gonna go deeper into child's pose. Now, everything in my body said, don't do this. And I was like, I'm already doing it. And then I felt very hot pain in my back. So we're now on 4th week of a sore back and just getting to a place where I can roll over in the middle of the night and not wake up like in pain, right? Okay. And then I decided to do a 10-day campaign for my online courses. So if you guys are following me on social media, you saw it was 10 days of videos, 10 days of other posts. I had to create those videos though. So I had to take a day to just create the videos. And then every day I was getting up and I was posting on LinkedIn, posting on Instagram, posting on Facebook. I was tired last week. I was tired. And all I wanted was to eat checkers. That's it. I was just like, I'm done with this. I'm tired. I don't know if this is even going to work, right? I don't know if I'm going to sell as many workshops as I need to sell or that I want to sell. And so having a couple friends, I have about 3 friends that I was texting as all of this was going on. And they not only held me accountable, but they challenged me to rethink of what success could be. And they challenged me to just hang in there. Hang in there. You're on day 7. You got 3 days left of the campaign and then it's over. And then you can take a break. And so you need that because there's going to be some challenging days as an entrepreneur. They just are. But I think the key is remembering why you're doing it, staying true to that. My why, so I wrote my first article at 14. I'm now 38. My why has not changed in 24 years. What has changed is the delivery of the products that I offer. And we'll talk about that shortly. So having someone, I'll also say when I started my company in 2006, I had already been working with clients too. And so it wasn't hard to find the clients. One of the challenging parts, as we talk about barriers to success, was figuring out how to charge. Right now, how do I charge? I will write down a number. I will send it to my accountant and I will look at the number myself. And if the number makes me sick to my stomach, I go to a number that doesn't make me feel sick to my stomach. That's how I know. If it's something where it's like, oh gosh, I don't think this is good. I don't think this is the best number. And my accountant and I are usually dead on when we're like, no, this number is too low. It should be this. So one of my recent barriers to success was making the connection that my business had changed. So I told you guys that I started off artist management, writing bios for artists, and that moved me into artist management. That, by definition, is a B2C business. B2C is business to customer, right? So that's your pathway. I was the business and I was working directly with the customer. I noticed that my income now was starting to come from businesses. It was coming more from businesses and less from individual artists, which means that I now had a B2B, business to business. That was a shift because that means your pricing is different. That means your customer is different. That means the language you use and the delivery is different. And so how am I still helping artists if they are no longer my direct customer? Because I am working with businesses that want to be connected with artists. And so they come to me and say, can you execute or, produce a gallery night? Can you produce a one-time music event? And can you curate and find the artists? Yes. Can you do a brand influencer campaign? We need to activate this demographic and we need artists who can speak to that demographic. Can you find those artists and create a brand influencer project? Yes, I can. So I'm able to bring in artists that way. So the work, the mission of what Catera does hasn't changed. The delivery has, because I'm now more B2B. So when we look at me doing the launch of the workshops last week, it was because I wanted to create something that was still B2C, that allowed me to directly engage the independent artist. So that was definitely a barrier. Another barrier, again, is pricing properly. And even though I had mentors, nobody really likes to talk about money. Nobody's like, let me show you my accounting software so I can show you these numbers. Let me show you a proposal that I submitted so I can let you see what I made. No, nobody's doing that. Nobody's doing that. And so it's not to say that folks couldn't. I think people are just protective about their coins. I get it. What that means for people like me and you, though, is it means that there's some stuff we just got to figure out on our own. And so I'll say one of the things I would caution you about, for those of you who are side hustling and are like, yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with that right now. When I side hustled, I undercharged. because I really didn't need to charge full price because I had a full-time job. And so if you're going to side hustle, you still got to charge full price. If for no other reason, to get yourself in the practice of charging full price. Got to do it. I'll also say too, again, I mentioned that I read a lot of books on how to start a business. I'm somebody who's like, oh, let me read it and I'll take, what they're saying and then I'll apply it. My journey into full-time entrepreneurship is unlike anything I've read in any of the books that I read. I haven't had to max out any credit cards to stay alive. I also did not have a savings account when I left. I was trying to build a savings account, or I had a savings account, but it wasn't fully stocked for me to leave. I think I was trying to get like 10,000 or 25,000 or something like that. I was trying to stack an enormous amount so that I could leave. And that did not happen. I wound up leaving my job with $110.97 in my account and no real plan on what to do next. I do not recommend that for anyone. Don't do that. But I will say that nothing I read in any book could prepare me for that. Capital, nothing could prepare me for that. I am not somebody who likes to jump without a plan. And I not only like a plan A, I like a plan B, C, and D. And some things in life, it's not going to happen. And you just going to have to ride the wave. And so I've been riding the wave for 16 months. That doesn't mean that I don't do a significant amount of work and outreach to folks to make sure that money is still coming in. What it does mean is, of everything that I read in the book, nothing prepared me for the past 16 months of how to build my company. So years ago, probably my biggest barrier was figuring out what Catera actually was going to be. So I had gone through artist management, I had done PR. So I did artist management and realized that wasn't fully what I wanted. It wasn't fully what I wanted. And artist management for me, there's so much day to day, right? Press releases, updating social media content, making sure the artist is at the show, finding venues, booking the venue. It didn't allow me to be big picture and connect my artists to sponsorship opportunities. And that's what I really wanted to do. So I had taken a couple years off, did the name change, found a designer that I really loved, came up with the logo. And that designer, by the way, is who I use to this day. So we've been working together now 5-6 years. And so it was like, okay, I think what I want to do is branding. But 5-6 years ago, people were not really using branding in the way that they're using it now. And it was so hard to explain to people what I wanted to do, because they would be like, well, ain't that just really artist management? And it's like, no, it's not. So that's actually when I started doing the workshops, because the workshops were an opportunity for me to put myself back out there after a couple of years off, share my successes, share what I learned, and try to impart that onto independent artists who might need a little support and don't have a team. So finding that space, discovering that space, it took a while to find it. And then again, like I said, even when I found it, like the company evolved into something else. And so for y'all as artists, you may find that right now I'm doing this, right? I'm doing artwork for private collections. But you may find that you're able to start doing artwork for apartments. You may find like, well, I really want to be in art galleries. And so you might be doing art for art galleries. And so be comfortable with the fact that your business will evolve and it will grow and it will create additional opportunities for you to do different things. I'll say another barrier to success, again, being completely honest, is believing in yourself. I'm not gonna lie to you and tell you that there aren't days where I'm like, yeah, I should really just sit in bed and eat cheese, chips, and French onion dip. Or where I'm like stressed out because I'm like, oh my gosh, is this client gonna say yes? Are they gonna say no? If they say no, what am I gonna do? Like, sometimes your confidence can take a little hit just because it's such new territory. I'll overcome on those days, again, because I have a tiny but really strong network of folks who hold me accountable, who are also entrepreneurs. And so in the same way, when they're having challenging days, I can support them in that way too. I also center myself in what I believe is my due north. The truth of the matter is there is literally no place in the world. There's no job in the world that I would rather have right now. None. And so that is so strong in me. It's like, okay, girl, you can cry, but you got like 3 minutes to cry. And then we gotta figure out what's next. I don't really know if that's healthy to limit my crying because sometimes it feels like I need more than 3 minutes, but it is what it is. That's how I get through. So I work hard to center myself in what I believe is my due north. I also work hard to spiritually ground myself, which makes it a lot easier to get through on those challenging days. And I think for me, that's probably the biggest, that again, that's the thing that like a lot of these entrepreneurship books didn't really talk about. It didn't talk about what to do on the challenging days. It didn't talk about like, well, what happens when you feel like, yo, maybe I'm not this good because I didn't make any money on this, art show that I just did, or, people are telling me I should make more content and I don't really even know how to do that. Like it didn't tell me how to manage the days where you do feel depressed. And those days will happen. They'll happen whether you're an entrepreneur or not. You have to have a coping mechanism and a way to center yourself. And a way to ask for help on those days. So last week, my friends got audio messages from me saying, yo, I'm struggling. I need some support. And they jumped in. So some of the tips and advice I would like to leave you with before I turn it over for questions. Read the books. So whatever books you're going to read about your journey, about your art practice, whatever, read the books. But then you got to trust yourself. And that is on the list of one of the things I wish someone had said to me. I wish someone had said, like, grab me by my cheeks and been like, Kennita, you've got this. You've got this. You know this better than anyone else. It's going to be okay. I'm going to tell you, no one gave me that talk, but this is me giving that talk to you. No one knows art the way you do. No one has your unique vision for the work that you do. Nobody, because there's no one like you. So you can read as many books as you want, follow as many subject matter experts as you like, but also understand that everything you read is not going to be applicable to you. But if you take the jump into business, it means that you are now an entrepreneur. So you can be an artist and have someone else sell your work. You could do that, right? And your goal is just the art. You don't deal with the money. You don't deal with nothing. You just stay in your studio, you make the art. But if you're here today, it's because you also want to be an entrepreneur and you want to learn how to handle some of those other aspects. So understand, once you make that jump into entrepreneurship, you are also a problem solver. And you have to trust yourself, right? Sometimes the advice that I ask my friends for is not the advice I take, because I know deep down in me that that's not the right pathway to go, but it's taken me decades to begin trusting myself enough to say, I've got this, and to say, I've got this, but even if I make a mistake, it's okay. So, first tip, read the books, but trust yourself because you are the subject matter expert of your business. Definitely find an accountant. And when we get off of this workshop, research Marquette's free legal entrepreneurship clinic. Because if you're going to be selling work, if you're going to be doing art galleries, whether they're, art galleries you're producing on your own or you're hopping on somebody else's art gallery, have contracts. You need them. Something else the entrepreneurship books don't tell you: rest, take naps. If you're side hustling, so we are absolutely in this grind and hustle culture. And I was, again, the past 16 months for me have been hustle, hustle, hustle. Part of my body has been resisting the urge to hustle. My body is just like, I did not leave my job where I was hustling every day to start my own company where I'm hustling every day. Like this is not the life. So take naps. I take naps often. On the weekends, I also take them during the week. If I have a break between meetings, I take a nap. But I also find ways for me to just do nothing. Those moments are a little harder to come by, but I try to create those pockets as well. And again, that's something that people don't tell you. People tell you to hustle, hustle, hustle until you get to like X amount of money or whatever. And then, then you can be free. No, you can rest now. And you should rest now because you need to give your brain time to generate ideas. And for me, on those days where I'm struggling, where I might be feeling depressed, a nap will allow me to wake up with a clear mind and a fresh mind to be able to think through whatever the problem might be. Take time to get silence time. So let your surroundings be silent. And make sure that you don't get caught up in what other folks tell you should be doing. So I read something months ago that said you should be posting on social media 7 times a day, every day. That is just not going to happen for me. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to schedule 7 posts a day. I'm not creating 7 posts a day. As a matter of fact, I don't like talking on social media unless I absolutely have to. So you've seen a lot of me the past 12 days because I've been promoting this event and I have been promoting my online courses. Now I'm going to kind of disappear for a little bit because why not? I don't have anything to talk about. So that's kind of all I have for today. Here's how to reach out to me: LinkedIn, Catera Music Artist Eats. Yes, real quick. I said I will tell you why I prefer LinkedIn because, as I mentioned, my business is now B2B. And LinkedIn allows me to connect with folks in businesses better than trying to reach those businesses on Instagram. Because on Instagram, I'm going to find that business, right? But if I go on LinkedIn and type in that business name, I can see everybody who works there. So it makes it easier for me to connect to folks. And I think all creatives should be using LinkedIn in that way. But I promised that we would make time for questions. And so one question that just popped up in the chat that was just sent to me was, how do I find who my audience is? So one thing you can do is you can create like a little survey, and it doesn't have to be real special. It could be just 2 or 3 questions, demographic, maybe income, whatever, and just kind of put it out there on Facebook and like see who responds to it. The idea is, so when I was looking to see who watched Artist Eats, which is a music series that I executive produce and host, we I want to say maybe episode 4 during the pandemic, we created a survey. And from that survey, we were able to create an avatar of our audience who was already watching the show, by the way. So they were already watching the show. We were able to create an avatar and say, this is the person who watches our show. They make X amount of dollars and they are between this age and this age. And this is how often they go out to eat. And this is how they find new music and ... So we just designed a survey to do that. Surveys are a really good way to find out who your audience is. You can also consider taking some notes on who's purchased your artwork. And so I know for your artwork, you have a particular aesthetic to it. And so part of why finding your audience is kind of important is because it can also help you determine, is that the audience you want? Sometimes the folks who are engaging with your work is really not the people you want. And so I think that you can put together so again, if you're selling artwork, you can right now pull out a piece of paper and say, okay, well, this person bought this piece and it was priced at this amount. And I know they're between this age and they're female and they're blah, 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 and whatever, right? And you can do that for each of the pieces that you've sold, all of the pieces that you've sold, and you can look at that price point and create the average. Well, on average, people are willing to spend, $500 on a piece. And based on this, maybe my audience is 25 to 34, but they're buying it for a parent. They're buying it for a grandma. You can even, if you have like just a semi good accounting system where you can kind of work through when the piece was purchased, you can also look through and say, well, what's the flow, right? Are people buying these for Mother's Day? Is it Christmas? Is it, you know what I mean? And so like being able to analyze the data, that's the part about being a business person, right? This is where being a business person, the entrepreneur comes in, because you got to be able to look at trends to be able to figure out like, okay, let me think through this a little bit more. Does that help? Okay. It looks like we have another question in the chat. How do I find a mentor? Yep. So mentorship is not necessarily about hand-holding. For me, I've used mentorship to ask questions. So I left college in 2004. And when I left college, there was no as a matter of fact, yeah, I left college around the same time I quit the library. And I remember there was no entrepreneurship degree. There was no, you'll be great without a degree. My mom was like, okay, so you finna get a full-time job, right? And I was like, ugh. And so mentorship for me, there was a broad range. For some folks, it was just coffee, and it was a 30-minute conversation, 60-minute conversation. And I'm just asking them all the questions I have. How long have you been in this industry? What type of classes did you take? Well, I'm not currently in college. Are there some other workshops I can take? Do you mind sending me a list of books that you read? That was that, right? There were also folks who, when I wanted to understand more about booking for festivals, for music outside of hip hop. So that's the other thing. A lot of my work was concentrated in hip hop, R&B, spoken word, because I primarily work with Black artists by choice, because I found the biggest equity gap there. And so I decided I wanted to learn more about Milwaukee and Wisconsin's Americana space, folk space, country space. I wanted to learn more about Wisconsin's musical legacy as a whole and musical history. So I started volunteering at festivals that were doing those types of music. And we'd meet over coffee, and I'd be like, hey, Can I volunteer at your event? So mentorship is also about being in service, because even though you're asking them to mentor you, you're also offering something to them as well. I believe in like reciprocal relationships. So I think that's a bit of a long-winded answer. I think the short answer is find people whose work you admire and see if they'd be willing to at least meet up virtually if they're not in Milwaukee, or if they will be willing to meet in person. And ask the questions you have, whether it's how do I get into galleries? How do I find a business manager? Whatever those questions are, ask them. And then at the end of the meeting, you can be like, would you mind if I followed up with you on my progress? Would you mind if we continued the relationship going? Okay, and then another question is, how will the workshop class benefit me? Okay, so I have a workshop called Squad Goals. And Squad Goals is literally the stuff we're talking about right now. When I left college, so I think when people graduate from college, you have access to your alumni network. Well, I did not graduate from college, so I did not have access to UW Milwaukee's alumni network. So I had to be able to build my network on my own. I had to find opportunities for speaking engagements. I had to find opportunities to learn so that I could eventually build my company. And so I think for anybody who is considering taking workshops, I think being able to network and build relationships with people is probably one of my strongest skill sets. I don't know if I'm naturally good at it. I know I'm naturally good at it now. I don't know that I was naturally good at it 20 years ago. But I say that because if I was not naturally good at it, then it's something that can be taught to everybody. And it's probably one of the things that has helped me be able to navigate being a creative in a city like Milwaukee, which doesn't really know what to do with creatives. So, you know, I've been able to maintain 16 months here working full time as a creative. So it's possible, but you got to have a solid network to help you get there. So I think we got time for one more question before I turn it back over to Beth. So if you got another question, throw it in the chat. Okay, well, thank y'all so much for coming. I know that this is going to be recorded, and so y'all can look at the link and follow up that way and continue to kind of look at it and kind of just take in everything that I discussed today. At the end of the workshop, it also has all of my contact information, so you know how to reach out to me. And thank y'all for spending a Monday evening with me. I'll turn it back over to Beth.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Casey. Oh, it was wonderful. Okay, so thank you very much for attending. And MPL does offer many business-related resources, from free Gale and Udemy business courses to demographics, industry, company, consumer, and other information databases, and other small business resources that can be the entrepreneur's best friend, all for free from MPL. So please check out the business research webpage on mpl.org by clicking on the research tab, and then under other resources, you can find our business research page. And we hope that you'll continue to stay connected with us. And we do have some upcoming programs in the Small Business Success Story series as well. And thank you so much, Casey, for this wonderful presentation. You are an amazing storyteller, and continued best, success in the future.
Well, thank you so much. And I should mention that Beth and I actually worked together at the library back when I was 16 years old, causing trouble in the children's section. So
absolutely,
she was not causing trouble. It was me. It was me talking too much. Yes, it was definitely me. It was definitely me.
Well, you're always one of my favorite people on the planet. So
Yay!
love you
Thank you,
much.
Beth. Thank you. Thank you. Well, y'all have a good night.
You too. Thank you so much.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. I got a lot out of it.
Thank you for coming, Cindy.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.